In this lesson, I'm going to give you 5 tips to better understand and study physics. Alright, so the first thing I tell is to study a little every day, okay? Physics, actually, the topics we see in physics, they're not very extensive, but there's a lot of them. So if you accumulate, if you leave it to study for the 1 week before the exam, you have a really hard time studying all these topics. They're actually not really hard, but there's a lot of them. Another thing is that in physics, almost everything is linked to the next topic. So, for example, when you study kinematics, we learn the basics of motion and everything, and after this we learn Newton's law, and we apply some of the concepts we learned before in kinematics, acceleration for example. After this we learn about tension and elastic forces, and then you go to circular motion, and by the time you get here, you're actually applying concepts that you saw before in all those other topics. So the thing is not that they're hard, circular motion is hard or any other thing, it's just that there's a lot of topics, and if you don't study every day a little, it will be very hard. We know that in physics we have a lot of functions, a lot of equations and concepts that are not really hard, but there's a lot, so study a little every day. Also, it's very important to improve your math skills. Well, mathematics is actually the foundation of physics, and you should know them, you should know it very, very well in order to understand, but also solve problems in physics. That's the language we use in physics. So between all the things you should learn, I advise you to learn really well about functions. That's how we transcribe, that's how we translate everything in physics, and also trigonometry. So if you're dealing with angles and everything in physics, well, we're dealing with the physical world, and in physical world we have a lot of angles and sines, cosines, and because of this you also need to know the trigonometric identities. So always when you're dealing with sines and cosines, it saves you a lot of time when solving problems. And also to plot graphs. Graphics, they give you a better understanding of the problem. You can visualize all the things that are happening in the problem through the graphs. Also, you should learn some simplifications. A lot of equations in physics, when we're building the equation, they seem very, very big and difficult to solve, but after you do some math simplifications, you see that's actually not that hard, right? So a lot of people struggle with these simplifications, and it is something that difficulties the solution of a problem, for example. My third advice is to use drawings. So if you see the problem, it's easier to solve it. So every time, it doesn't matter, even if it looks like a simple, very simple problem, draw it, okay? It doesn't matter if it's about mechanics, an electric circuit, or a thermodynamical cycle, doesn't matter, draw everything. When you draw, you may see some details that you didn't see before when just reading a problem. So if you draw it, it shows you that you understood the problem also. And you can concentrate in each stage of the problem itself. So you can just write, for example, the circuit, put all the information you have before from the problem, from reading. So you put all the information you have here, and you can concentrate in each part, each step of the problem solving. Another advice is to practice with problems. Well, as I told you before, the theory is not that hard to understand, actually, but it's not everything. So you should practice with problems. When you do it, you actually have a better understanding of the theory, because you're revising everything, but now in practice. It also helps you to fix the knowledge in your brain, okay? Because now you're repeating everything. When you solve problems, physics problems, you repeat a lot of the equations you saw in theory, and it helps you fix your knowledge. Also, if you do it and use your last advice to draw the problem, you can think outside the box. You can think about solutions you've never seen before and some details you didn't see before. So when you do it, you're actually exercising your brain for similar problems that you may encounter in the future. For example, in exams. So it's actually it saves you time on exams, because if you go to an exam and you solve a lot of other problems that are similar from those that are in the exam, it's much easier to solve the problem. My last advice is actually a compilation of all the other things, but in a sequence, okay? So you should understand, study, rest, and repeat. You should create a study habit for yourself. This is one of my own, for example. You should study a little every day, use all the other tips, but you should create your own study habit. In this way that I divided the learning process, I think it's a good idea to try and see if it works for you. So when you understand, it's actually when you're in class. In class, you listen to your teacher, to your professor, and it's a passive action. You're just listening and trying to make sense out of all the things he's saying, okay? So then, after this, you understand the problem or the theory, doesn't matter, okay? After this, when you get home, you should study. And study is by yourself, okay? Study by yourself, and this is the active process. Now you're applying everything that you learned when you were in class, understanding the topic. Now you're applying this knowledge, okay? And you should follow the tips I told you before. After studying, you should rest. And by rest, I really mean sleeping. It's, when you sleep is when you tell your brain that all the other things you were doing before are important and they should be there in your mind. So if you study just a little bit every day, you can understand all the topics better, you can apply them, and when you do it, this active process here tells your brain when you're resting, sleeping, that these are important things, so you should remember. And when you sleep, after this, you remember, because your brain thinks it's important to know. So if you do this cycle every day, I think your life will be much easier when dealing with physics. I hope you enjoy it, and see you next time.
Physics doesn't have to be hard. Subscribe to our channel and learn with the geeks.